it's that first spell, what we want to put into the world. In retrospect to our last class, we're talking about the mind and consciousness and the faculties of the mind, right? Imagination, will, perception, intuition, reason, memory. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about consciousness and mind and those faculties, but tapping now into the supermind and the superconsciousness and higher self. So we're tapping here into the invisible, those things that is more like empiric, and there's not like much proof. And we need to feel with our senses or extra sensorial perceptions, right? It's not that we can see and perceive with our five senses, we're common senses. So that's why I started with the Hariom, of the acknowledgement of opening our minds to that which we can't see. Because we can't see doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? We have this two kind of people in the world. One that says, I only believe in what I can't see, in what I can see. The other day I saw a meme that was so cute. That was this person saying, I only believe in what I can see. And then there was like the radio waves and the telephone waves floating and the TV waves. So there's so much out there that we can't really see with our naked eyes, but it's still here. It's still here with us. It's still there. So psychology studies is the science that is studied those faculties of the mind, but it's also a very new science. It has, I think, maybe 80 years only. It's that new, really. In the beginning, psychology, medicine, philosophy were together, no? It was entangled. And in the very beginning, psychology studied mostly pathologies. So it was really seeing what's wrong with the individual. And then other types of psychology came, those four forces of psychology was evolving with time in history. And then we came into the humanism. I can edit this later, it's fine. So the field that is study those paranormal powers or ESP, the extrasensorial perceptions, is the field called parapsychology. Tell people that you hear voices or things like that. The people in some places, people can take you to some asylum or some not a very happy place for really treating people in the best way. If you live in India, if you are from India and you tell your parents or someone that you have those experiences, they'll take you to an ashram, to a master, to a teacher, to a guru that will properly guide you into those paths. But here in the West, we have very little of this education and even fewer places that can support this type of people and this type of experiences. So this branch of parapsychology and transpersonal psychology is now seeing the individual as a whole. And that's the beauty of it. Now we can discuss consciousness. We are more open-minded to the paranormal, to the things that we can't comprehend, that we can't prove. And that's why it's important, these kinds of modalities. Say they are. And one of the things that we understand studying the ESP is that emotional bonds are important. Well, like you said, your grandmother, your son. So when we have a very, very emotional, strong connection with someone, we're very much linked to that person, then we can easily project. So we're going to do exercises to use that strong emotion to make easier for us to learn how to continue practicing and developing those things. Anybody else like to share anything? This is beautiful because, you know, sometimes when someone shares, we feel identified or we learn new things. And really, I would love for those calls and those classes to be like this, to be like a community in the unified field. And when we say, I'm just going to go with the flow, what we're really doing is tuning in our energies to allow this most harmonious music to play through us. So we know that we are in the right path, and that needs a lot of trust and surrender. So those are some of the aspects, 3 aspects that we already discover with our conversation and share that it is needed for ESP: emotion connection, tuning in or going with the flow, and trust. Okay, those things are important for allowing those extrasensorial powers or perceptions to occur. Is anyone else? Beautiful. So now we already have one more thing that is important here. It's the connection with nature, right? The connection, the coming back to the great mother, to the elements. And it's so beautiful because now I know Susie for many years and we have been working together for some time. And yeah, so much have changed and it's so beautiful to see. And like everything else in life, the ESP is practices, extrasensorial perceptions. So let's continue because we have limited time, but we have our chat and our group and community that we're growing, and I would love to hear more from you in the future for sure with your stories. So what are those extrasensorial perceptions? And let's talk about going back to the faculties of the mind. We have imagination, and we talk a little bit about what is imagination. Something is putting, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not so into familiar with the technology. But the imagination. So what we're imagining or seeing in the hypnotherapy or this or that, is it real? What is it not real? Is it that something that I'm imagining, or it is really a past life or a memory of a future life? Remember, I think we talked a little bit about that on the first class, that it doesn't really matter if it's imagination, if it's a symbol from the subconscious, because everything is in our universe of our mind. So the imagination is this door that helps us to enter the subconscious realms. So imagination, it's important when we want to discover and uncover and explore ESP. The other thing, the will. The will is the other faculty of the mind that we talked about last class, and we have to want. We have to want to experience these things. We have to have an intention to say, one thing is for me sitting and looking at the mountains. Another thing is I'm sitting looking at the mountains and listening to a message. Okay. Perception, ESP, extrasensorial perceptions. So we talked about the perceptions. I see with my eyes, I hear with my ears, I feel with my touch, and I taste with my mouth. So the ESP is like the sixth sense, which is the next faculty of the mind, which is also connected with intuition, but is also seeing with the third eye. For clairvoyance, for instance, we're going to go into each one of the clairs in a moment. And then the other faculty of the mind that can stay or interrupt and be on the way is the reason. Again, is this real? Is it not real? Is it fantasy? Is it imagination? It's not. When I see clients in hypnotherapy, some of you have done hypnotherapy with me before, and you might remember that there's always two minds that is active pretty much. One is seeing the things, is feeling the feelings, is having the visions, the insights. The other mind is questioning, why I'm seeing that? Why I saw that in a movie? Maybe it's because I saw in a movie, or maybe I'm remembering that because my mom told me. So there's always this reason in mind, which is great. All faculties of the mind, they're here for a reason. We don't want to deny any of the parts of the mind. But then comes this trust, right? Trust in the process. So the extrasensorial perception, and let's talk about clairs. Have you heard about this concept? So we have here in my notes, I wrote it down. Clairvoyance, and sorry, my English, some of those words I can't really pronounce well. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairolfaction, and clairgustance. So all of those things can also be an ESP. So what clair means comes from clair, from clarity. So clairvoyance is clear seeing. I can see clear. One thing is to see or to look. Another thing is to see. Clairsentience is clear feeling. You know when someone tells you something and you get goosebumps? I call that truth bumps. It really deeply, truly resonates with you. Your body feels and your body tells you things. When you see this gorgeous man passing, this beautiful woman passing, and you have the butterflies in your stomach. So it's to listen to the feelings in our body. We all have that capacity. We enter a crowded room. It doesn't matter if you are like a yoga teacher or entrepreneur in a big company. You enter a crowded room and some people feel right away like, oh, the energy in this room feels strange. The energy of this room feels great. So we all have those capacities to all those extrasensorial perceptions. So that's a beautiful one, is to notice the sensations in our body. What is our body telling us? Clear feelings, clear cognizance. I don't know how to say that. Clear cognizance is clear knowing. Clear knowing. Clear knowing, it's about gut feeling. It's about that first thing that comes and you just know. You don't know why you know, but you just know. And that again, you need to trust. That the biggest exercise for this one is to trust. It's like I have this bad feeling. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I shouldn't take this airplane, or I shouldn't go to this meeting. I learned that listening. There was a time not very long ago, a few years ago, that I would always say yes. Let's go to that festival. Yes. Let's go to this party. Yes. And then I started noticing this doesn't feel so good. Why doesn't sit with me? Why doesn't feel good? I don't need to say yes for everything. And I'm gonna sit with that feeling. And sometimes I try everything. It's like it doesn't work. I send a message, the person doesn't answer. I try to book the flight, something happened, and it doesn't work. Over and over again. You just have this, I can't even explain. It's like this, I can't decide. Clairfaction, clairolfact is the smell. One thing is to smell, another thing is to really smell. And these things might sound too simple for you at the moment, but they're very effective. Trust. I'll tell you a little anecdote. My family, on my father's side, they're all boat people. They're all like I call pirates. So my grandfather, he built the first yacht with his own hands, and he was a champion of yacht. He was one of the founders of Yacht Club, and one of his son was a naval engineer. His other son was in the Navy, and my father had tourist boats. So I was born in an island, and we would go through islands on the boat. And my grandfather was so in love with his boat, was his life, and he had this dream of taking his boat to the North Brazil, where he was born in Ceará, but he could never do that. And when one time he was working on the boat and he had a heart attack and he died. And then years later, sorry, at that same time, my father was in the boat, and my uncle actually was on the boat in his military thing, and he smelled flowers. And he was like, that's so weird. I'm in the middle of the ocean. There's no flowers. There's no flowers anywhere. And my family was quite in tune for those things. And he called home, and then was when he realized that his father, my grandfather, had died. Some people say that his spirit was still on the boat when the boat was sold. So the people who bought the boat took the boat to Ceará to fulfill his wish. And then they said that the spirit left the boat after that. All the ESP that have been studied and reported by scientists. I will give you some material for you to watch after our class. But a lot of those studies have been done by the FBI and NASA. The FBI is huge on ESP. Okay, so one of them is called telepathy, clairvoyance that we spoke about, precognition, psychokinesis, retrocognition, mediumship, remote viewing, remote healing, aura reading. So all of those ESP have been studied. Of course, there's a lot still to be proved and studied, but they're great also to know. So telepathy is mind to mind. The last class I gave you an exercise. I'd love to hear from you if you have tried with your nephews and kids that you have to guess a number or guess a color, 4 colors, 4 numbers. That's a great exercise to practice for that. It's just, and then again, going back to this emotional bounds, have you ever experienced like loving someone so much, being so much in tune with this other person that you just look at each other and know exactly what you're thinking, right? So that is telepathy. Clairvoyance, we spoke about it. Precognition is knowing about future. And some of you shared with the dreams. That's very important to be aware, because those things that can be visions, dreams, in any way that your subconscious trying to talk to you. And again, going back to trust that, and then take action. That's very important. And that's the things that I study in science, because it's one thing is to know these things, and another thing is to apply in our life. Like, like if you have a strong dream, don't go. If you have the strong feeling in your body, don't do it. Then listen and follow the instructions. Psychokinesis is the manipulation of objects. So very good exercise also to practice if you're interested. I don't know in how much that is useful to our lives today, but it can be just interesting to try. I've tried. I think it didn't work. But you can start with small objects like paper or feather and see how it moves. And then goes to things more harder materials or heavier. Retrocognition is just like the precognition. Precognition, the future. Retrocognition is knowing about something that already passed. And that we can put deja vu into that one as well. Very common feelings of deja vu. So what is deja vu trying to tell me? There's messages there too. So obviously mediumship is an ability to be the channel to receive guidance from the spirit guides or angels, creatures, star family. Remote viewing is a great one that has been extensively studied and practiced by NASA and FBI people. Is like this ability to see beyond our physical eyes, to discover where things are hidden, where did you lost things, if there's someone that you love that is in trouble, so that we're gonna do exercise for that today. Remote healing, it's a beautiful ESP that can be very useful and beneficial for our day-to-day life. Lots of people who practice Reiki know that one pretty well, that you can learn how to manipulate energy in certain way and extent, that then you can learn how to spread that energy throughout. And aura reading, good exercise of aura reading for those who can have facility of seeing colors, is to ask a friend to be sitting on the white background like I have behind me, and then you gaze on the third eye for some time until you start seeing the aura, the auric field. One time I was in Sedona and I went to take a picture of my aura. It's funny because this is the story of my life and I work with this all my life, but something that is very healthy is believe, disbelieve in it. With all those things, I'm always like believing, disbelieving, and it's a healthy thing, I think, for the psychic. But I had my aura photo taken and this woman is telling me, oh yeah, this and such and such. And then she said, but here, right here in your heart, you had a heartbreak 3 years ago. And I start crying. This woman, she could see in the field of my heart, a broken heart. It's right there, it's in the field. You can freaking see, the electronics can see, the Kirlian photography can show you. Isn't that fabulous? She told me that she was not just reading the pictures, but she was also a medium. So she could feel the exact year when that happened. And it was that, like when I broke up with my boyfriend 3 years ago, 7 years ago, that happened. It's a crazy experience. So aura reading. So yeah, that is all about the ESPs for today. We still have some time for our practice, for remote viewing meditation. And like always, I like to take a card to close the practice. So before we get very quickly into the practice, if there is any other thing that you like to ask, share, or mention, please unmute yourselves. It's another exercise I forgot to mention, really good, is really to listen to the music that you like. Crystal bowls also very good for developing that mantra chanting, because when you the intention of clairaudience exercises is like when you repeat a music, when you repeat a song, and then you turn it off and you can still listen and you can still hear it. That's a good exercise. Somebody I forgot to mention is synesthesia. Synesthesia is when something of the wires in our brain crisscross and we can taste the color or smell the taste. It's a beautiful, I experienced that several times in Sound Journey. And they're all beautiful experiences. So why we practice those things, why we want to develop those extrasensorial perceptions, is really just so we can live a more fulfilling, better, full life. So we can hear to that inner voice that speak. We know what direction to take. We know which people that it's good for us to be close, to be in contact with. We know which foods that are better for us. Just for that, so we can become better individuals. So